The night started like any other for Jake Miller, a tired single dad closing up his small diner after a long day. He wiped down the counter, humming softly to a tune playing from an old radio, thinking about how he'd finally get home to tuck his little daughter, Emily, into bed. The streets were quiet, the smell of coffee lingered, and all seemed peaceful, until the door slammed open and chaos walked in. A man in a ski mask burst inside, waving a gun. The cash register drawer flew open, bills scattering like frightened birds. But in that moment of panic, while customers ducked behind tables and someone screamed, Jake did something no one expected. He stayed calm. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He just looked at the man, eyes soft, voice steady, and said something that changed both of their lives forever. Before we get into this powerful story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. You're watching Your Channel Name, where we bring you real stories that remind us how kindness still has the power to change the world. Jake had owned Miller's Diner for 5 years. It wasn't fancy, but it was his dream. He started it after his wife passed away, trying to build something for Emily, his 6-year-old daughter who still asked sometimes when mommy was coming back. Life hadn't been easy. Between juggling bills, parenting alone, and trying to smile through exhaustion, Jake had learned one thing: when life gets hard, kindness matters even more. That night, the diner had only 2 customers left: an older woman eating pie and a man in a suit sitting by the window, typing on his laptop. Jake didn't know that man's name, but he'd noticed him before. He'd come in a few times that week, always quiet, always watching. When the robber stormed in, shouting for everyone to get down, Jake's heart raced. But instead of reacting with fear, something inside him clicked. Maybe it was years of being a dad, maybe it was the compassion that came from knowing pain too well. He raised his hand slowly and said, "Hey, it's okay. No one's gonna get hurt. You can take the money. Just breathe." The robber's hands were trembling. He couldn't have been more than 25. His voice cracked as he demanded cash, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Jake could see the fear beneath the anger. He filled a paper bag with the money, then gently placed it on the counter. "Here," Jake said softly. "But you look hungry. You want something to eat before you go?" The room froze. The woman behind the counter gasped. The man in the suit lifted his head. The robber blinked. "What?" "I said, you hungry? I got a burger still hot on the grill." "You can take it to go," Jake said, still calm, still steady. The robber didn't know what to do with that kind of kindness. For a moment, his shaking stopped. His lip trembled. He looked at Jake, really looked at him, then slowly lowered the gun. "Why are you being nice to me?" he asked. Jake shrugged. "Because maybe you just had a bad day. I've had those too." For a moment, time hung in the air. Then the robber nodded slightly, grabbed the bag of money, and ran out. No one was hurt. The police came later, but by then, the stranger in the suit had already left, though not before slipping a business card under the cash register. Jake didn't think much of it. He gave his statement to the cops, checked on his customers, and finally drove home. He didn't know that the man in the suit had seen everything. And that man wasn't just any customer, he was Richard Hale, the CEO of a major security company in the city. The next morning, Jake dropped Emily off at school and headed back to the diner. When he arrived, there were reporters outside. Cameras. Microphones. Flashing lights. Confused, he pushed through the crowd and saw Richard standing there. "Mr. Miller," Richard said with a smile, "you don't know me, but last night I was sitting in your diner. I saw everything." Jake looked puzzled. "Everything?" Richard nodded. "The way you handled that man, you didn't just save your customers. You showed more courage and compassion than most people ever could." Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "I just didn't want anyone hurt." Richard smiled again, this time softer. "That's exactly why you're special." He explained that the diner's security camera footage had captured the entire event and Richard's company had shared it, with Jake's permission, as part of a campaign about calm leadership and empathy. Overnight, the video went viral. Millions of people watched as Jake, a humble single dad, faced danger not with violence, but with kindness. The internet exploded with messages. Some called him a hero. Others said he gave them hope in humanity again. Jake didn't know how to handle the attention. He wasn't looking for fame, he just wanted to make enough money to buy Emily a new bike for her birthday. But Richard had another idea. He invited Jake to his company headquarters a week later. As Jake walked into the tall glass building, he felt small, like a diner cook who didn't belong in a place filled with marble floors and expensive suits. But when he saw Richard waiting for him, smiling proudly, he relaxed. Richard led him to a conference room filled with cameras and staff. "Jake," he said, "after what you did, we want to offer you something." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Offer me?" Richard nodded. "We want you to lead our new community safety initiative, training people how to handle crises with empathy, patience, and courage. You'd be the public face of the program. And, of course, it comes with a salary, one that'll take care of you and Emily." Jake stood speechless. "I'm just a diner guy," he said. "I don't know anything about programs or public speaking." Richard smiled. "You know about humanity. That's what people need most." A year later, Jake was standing on stage at a community center, speaking to a crowd of young volunteers. He talked about that night how fear could make people do desperate things, and how choosing calm over anger could change everything. Emily sat in the front row, clapping with pride. He still owned the diner, but now it was more than a business. It had become a place of hope. The walls were covered with notes from people around the world, handwritten letters thanking Jake for reminding them that kindness wasn't weakness. One note stood out to him. It was from a young man named Tyler, the same robber from that night. The letter was short but powerful. "Mr. Miller, you don't know what your kindness did for me. That night, I was lost, scared, and ready to give up. But you looked at me like I was still worth something. I turned myself in the next day. I'm clean now. I'm working. I'm trying to be better. Thank you for seeing me as a person when no one else did." Jake read that letter 100 times. Every time, it reminded him that one act of compassion could ripple farther than anyone could imagine. Months later, Jake stood outside his diner one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. Emily ran up beside him, holding his hand. "Daddy," she said, "Mommy would be proud of you." He smiled, eyes glistening. "I hope so, sweetheart. I just did what I thought was right." At that moment, Richard walked up with a camera crew. "Jake," he said, "we're expanding the program nationwide. We're calling it the Miller Initiative because it started with you." Jake's jaw dropped. "You're serious?" Richard nodded. "You didn't just stay calm in a robbery. You reminded the world that kindness is power. That's something worth spreading." As the years passed, Jake's story continued to inspire millions. Schools taught the Miller method, using compassion and composure to diffuse conflict. People all over America wrote about how his story changed the way they treated others. And Jake? He kept serving coffee with a smile, greeting everyone who walked through his diner door as if they were old friends. Because deep down, he knew something simple yet profound: you never know whose life you might change just by being kind. In the end, the world didn't remember Jake Miller as a man who faced a robber. They remembered him as the man who faced hate with grace, fear with calm, and danger with love. So if you ever find yourself in a moment of anger, fear, or judgment, think of Jake. Think of how one quiet voice of kindness can silence chaos. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stay calm, and choose compassion. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video so more people can be inspired to spread kindness every day. You've been watching Your Channel Name, where real stories remind us that kindness is the greatest strength of all.